Imperial War Museums is a British national museum organisation with branches at 5 locations in England, 3 of which are in London. Founded as the Imperial War Museum in 1917, the museum was intended to record the civil and military war effort and sacrifice of Britain and its empire during the First World War. The museum's remit has since expanded to include all conflicts in which British or Commonwealth forces have been involved since 1914. As of 2012, the museum aims to provide for, and to encourage, the study and understanding of the history of modern war and wartime experience. Originally housed in the Crystal Palace at Sydenham Hill, the museum opened to the public in 1920. In 1924 the museum moved to space in the Imperial Institute in South Kensington, and finally in 1936 the museum acquired a permanent home which was previously the Bethlehem Royal Hospital in Southwark. The outbreak of the Second World War saw the museum expand both its collections and its terms of reference. But in the post-war period the museum entered a period of decline. The 1960s saw the museum redevelop its Southwark building, now referred to as Imperial War Museum London, which serves as the organisation's corporate headquarters. During the 1970s the museum began to expand onto other sites. The first, in 1976, was a historic airfield in Cambridgeshire now referred to as IWM Duxford. In 1978, the Royal Navy cruiser HMS Belfast became a branch of the museum, having previously been preserved for the nation by a private trust. In 1984, the Cabinet War Rooms, an underground wartime command centre, was opened to the public. From the 1980s onwards, the museum's Bethlehem building underwent a series of multi-million-pound redevelopments, completed in 2000. Finally, 2002 saw the opening of IWM North in Trafford, Greater Manchester, the 5th branch of the museum and the first in the north of England. In 2011 the museum rebranded itself as IWM, standing for Imperial War Museums. The museum's collections include archives of personal and official documents, photographs, film and video material, and oral history recordings, an extensive library, a large art collection, and examples of military vehicles and aircraft, equipment and other artifacts. The museum is funded by government grants, charitable donations and revenue generation through commercial activity such as retailing, licensing, and publishing. Admission is free to IWM London and IWM North, but an admission fee is levied at the other branches. The museum is an exempt charity under the Charities Act 1993 and a non-departmental public body under the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. As of January 2012 the chairman of the trustees is Sir Francis Richards. Since October 2008, the museum's Director General has been Diane Lees. History. Establishment. 1917 to 1924. On the 27th of February 1917, Sir Alfred Mond, an MP and First Commissioner of Works, wrote to the Prime Minister David Lloyd George to propose the establishment of a National War Museum. This proposal was accepted by the War Cabinet on 5 March 1917 and the decision announced in the Times on 26 March. A committee was established, chaired by Mond, to oversee the collection of material to be exhibited in the new museum. This National War Museum Committee set about collecting material to illustrate Britain's war effort by dividing into subcommittees examining such subjects as the Army, the Navy, the production of munitions, and women's war work. There was an early appreciation of the need for exhibits to reflect personal experience in order to prevent the collections becoming dead relics. So Martin Conway, the museum's first Director General, said that exhibits must be vitalized by contributions expressive of the action, the experiences, the valor and the endurance of individuals. The museum's first curator and secretary was Charles Foulkes, who had previously been curator of the Tower of London Armouries. In July 1917, Mond made a visit to the Western Front in order to study how best to organize the museum's growing collection. While in France, he met French government ministers, and Field Marshal Haig, who reportedly took great interest in his work. In December 1917, the name was changed to the Imperial War Museum after a resolution from the India and Dominions Committee of the Museum. The museum was opened by the King at the Crystal Palace on 9 June 1920. During the opening ceremony, Sir Alfred Mond addressed the King on the behalf of committee, saying that it was hoped to make the museum so complete that everyone who took part in the war, however obscurely, would find therein an example or illustration of the sacrifice he or she made, and that the museum was not a monument of military glory, but a record of toil and sacrifice. Shortly afterwards, the Imperial War Museum Act 1920 was passed and established a board of trustees to oversee the governance of the museum. To reflect the museum's imperial remit, the board included appointees of the governments of India, South Africa, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. While the act was being debated, some parliamentarians felt that the museum would perpetuate an undesirable war spirit, and Commander Joseph Kenworthy MP said that he would refuse to vote a penny of public money to commemorate such suicidal madness of civilization as that which was shown in the late war. On the August Bank Holiday 1920, the first public holiday since the museum's opening, 94,179 visitors were received, and by November 1921, 2,290,719 had visited the museum. Relocation 1924 to 1936. In 1924, the museum moved to the Imperial Institute building in South Kensington. While this location was more central and in a prestigious area for museums, the accommodation itself proved cramped and inadequate, and in 1936 a new permanent location was found south of the River Thames in Southwark. The building, designed by James Lewis, was the former Bethlehem Royal Hospital, which had been vacated following the hospital's relocation to Beckenham in Kent. The site was owned by Lord Rothermere, who had originally intended to demolish the building entirely in order to provide a public park in what was a severely overcrowded area of London. Eventually, the central portion of the hospital building was retained while its two extensive wings were removed and the resulting space named Geraldine Mary Harmsworth Park, after Lord Rothermere's mother. So Martin Conway described the building as a fine building, really quite noble building, with a great portico, a distinguishing dome, and two great wings added to it for the accommodation of lunatics no longer required. This particular building can be made to contain our collection admirably, and we shall preserve from destruction quite a fine building which otherwise will disappear. The distinguishing dome was added by Sidney Smirke in 1846 and housed the hospital's chapel. The museum was reopened by the Duke of York in its new accommodation on 7 July 1936. Second World War and after. 1939 to 1966. With the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939, the museum began to collect material documenting the conflict. In November 1939, during the so-called phony war, the museum appeared in the opening sequence of the GPO film unit production The First Days, in which children are seen playing on some of the museum's German artillery pieces captured during the First World War. With the evacuation of British forces from Dunkirk in May-June 1940, however, the British Army's shortage of equipment saw 18 of the museum's artillery pieces return to military service. The museum's trench clubs were used by the Home Guard, while other items such as sights and optical instruments were returned to the Ministry of Supply. The museum refused, however, to return some historic items such as a naval gun from HMS Lance or a gun served by Victoria Cross-winning boy seaman Jack Cornwell. The museum initially remained open but was closed for the duration of the war in September 1940 with the onset of the Blitz. On the 31st of January 1941, the museum was struck by a Luftwaffe bomb which fell on the Naval Gallery. A number of ship models were damaged by the blast, and a short seaplane, which had flown at the Battle of Jutland, was destroyed. While closed to the public, the museum's building was used for a variety of purposes connected to the war effort, such as a repair garage for government motor vehicles, a center for air raid precautions, civil defense lectures, and a firefighting training school. In October 1945, the museum mounted a temporary exhibition, the first since the end of the war in August, which showcased technologies developed by the Petroleum Warfare Department. These included the submarine fuel pipeline Pluto, the fog dispersal method Fido, and flame weapons such as the Churchill Crocodile and Wasp universal carrier. However, due to bomb damage to both the building and exhibits, the museum was obliged to reopen its galleries piecemeal. The museum reopened a portion of its galleries in November 1946. A third of the galleries were opened in 1948, and a further wing opened in 1949. In 1953, with Commonwealth forces engaged in Korea and Malaya, the museum began its current policy of collecting material from all modern conflicts in which British or Commonwealth forces were involved. However, despite this expansion of remit, the early post-war period was a period of decline for the museum. Dr. Noble Frankland, the museum's director from 1960 to 1982, described the museum's galleries in 1955 as appearing dingy and neglected, and in a dismal state of decay. The museum's numerous stunning exhibits notwithstanding redevelopment and expansion. 1966 to 2012. In 1966, the museum's Southwark building was extended to provide collections, storage and other facilities, the first major expansion since the museum had moved to the site. The development also included a purpose-built cinema. In 1967, the museum acquired a pair of 15-inch naval guns. One had been mounted on the Royal Navy's HMS Ramillies and the other on both HMS Resolution and HMS Roberts. Both had been fired in action during the Second World War. They went on permanent to display outside the museum in May 1968. The acquisition of these guns, a representative of the dreadnought era of British battleships, led the museum to seek to acquire a 6-inch triple turret that would be representative of a number of classes of British cruisers. This would eventually lead to the preservation of the Royal Navy light cruiser HMS Belfast, which became a branch of the museum in 1978. Later in 1968, on 13 October, the museum was attacked by an arsonist, Timothy John Daly, who claimed he was acting in protest against the exhibition of militarism to children. He caused damage valued at approximately £200,000, not counting the loss of irreplaceable books and documents. On his conviction in 1969, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. In 1969, VIAF Duxford, a Royal Air Force fighter airfield in Cambridgeshire, was declared surplus to requirements by the Ministry of Defence. Needing further space, the museum duly requested permission to use part of the site as temporary storage. The entire site was later transferred to the museum in February 1976, and Duxford, now referred to as Imperial War Museum Duxford, became the museum's first branch. Also during the 1970s, the government raised the possibility of the museum taking over the historic Cabinet War Rooms in Whitehall. The museum was reluctant due to its new commitments related to Duxford and HMS Belfast, but agreed in 1982. By 1983, the museum was again looking to redevelop the Southwark site and approached engineering firm Arup to plan a phased program of works that would expand the building's exhibition space, provide appropriate environmental controls to protect collections, and improve facilities for visitors. The following year, in April 1984, the Cabinet War Rooms were opened to the public as a branch of the museum. The first phase of the works to the Southwark building started in 1986 and were completed in 1989, during which time the museum was closed to the public. The work included the conversion of what was previously the hospital's courtyard into a centerpiece large exhibits gallery. This gallery featured a strengthened ground floor, a first-floor mezzanine and second-story viewing balcony. Into this space were placed tanks, artillery pieces, vehicles, ordnance and aircraft from the First World War to the Falklands War. For some years the museum was marketed as the new Imperial War Museum. This atrium, with its concentration of military hardware, has been described as the biggest boys' bedroom in London. This first phase cost £16.7 million and the museum was reopened by the Queen on 29 June 1989. In September 1992 the museum was the target of a provisional Irish Republican Army attack against London tourist attractions. 2 incendiary devices were found in a basement gallery, but were extinguished by staff before the arrival of the fire brigade, and caused only minor damage. The second stage of the redevelopment of the Southwark building, during which the museum remained open to the public, was completed in 1994. During the 1990s, while these works were going on, the museum was also seeking to open a branch in the north of England. 71 sites were offered for consideration by 36 local councils, and in January 1999 the then Culture Secretary Chris Smith formally launched a project to construct a new branch of the museum, Imperial War Museum North, in Trafford, Greater Manchester. The following year, 2000, the final phase of the Southwark redevelopment was completed. The development included the installation of the museum's Holocaust exhibition, which was opened by the Queen on 6 June 2000. This was the first permanent exhibition dedicated to the Holocaust in a UK museum. Its development had taken 5 years at a cost of £5 million. 2 years later, in July 2002, Imperial War Museum North was opened. Between 2004 to 2010 the museum was a partner in a national learning project entitled Their Past Your Future, part of the Big Lottery Fund's Veterans Reunited program to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, a partnership between the IWM, the Museums, Libraries and Archives Council, and Scottish, Northern Irish and Welsh museum authorities. Phase 1 included a touring exhibition seen by more than 2 million people, overseas educational visits and further activities run by local authorities. A second phase took a wider 20th-century historical remit. It comprised a learning program using overseas visits and social media, and a professional development scheme for educators. A digital archive of the project, online exhibitions and learning resources were also produced. In October 2011 the museum rebranded itself as Imperial War Museums, the initials IWM forming the basis of a new corporate logo. In September 2011 the museum secured funding from NESA, the Arts and Humanities Research Council and Arts Council England, to develop social interpretation systems to allow visitors to comment on, collect, and share museum objects via social media. These systems were incorporated in A Family in Wartime, an exhibition at IWM London depicting British family life during the Second World War, which opened in April 2012. First World War Centenary 2014. In August 2009 the museum announced the creation of the Imperial War Museum Foundation. Chaired by Jonathan Harmsworth, the foundation was charged with raising funds to support the redevelopment of Imperial War Museum London's permanent galleries. In December 2010, plans were announced to redevelop IWM London's First World War Gallery in time for the conflict's centenary in 2014, and Prince William, Duke of Cambridge, became the foundation's patron. In a speech at IWM London on the 11th of October 2012, Prime Minister David Cameron announced an additional £5 million of government funding to support the museum's redevelopment, as part of funding arrangements to facilitate national centenary commemorations. The £40 million redevelopment, designed by Foster & Partners, provides new gallery spaces dedicated to the history of the First World War, a new central hall, easier navigation and improved visitor facilities, access and circulation. In preparation for building work, a number of galleries were closed during September 2012, and by December 2012 over 60 large objects had been removed from the IWM London atrium for conservation at Duxford. To allow building work to go ahead, IWM London closed to the public on 2 January 2013. The museum partially reopened on 29 July 2013. IWM London was formally reopened on 17 July 2014 by Prince William, Duke of Cambridge.